Hello everyone, I'm Naveen Agarwal and I want to welcome all of you to watch this video recording of a recent interactive Q&A session we just had. And what a great session we had. We talked about the latest harmonization efforts for ISO 14971 in Europe. But most importantly, we covered in great detail the standardization effort that is going on in our industry about terms used for adverse events reporting. Medical device adverse events reporting is very important and required for regulatory reasons as well. But it makes a very good link with the post-market surveillance process and your risk management file. So we talked about why and how you could link these terms and codes in your risk management file. So I invite you to take a look. This is a great place for industry colleagues to discuss in a very casual, informal way these topics of interest, share knowledge, and be able to ask questions. So I invite you to join these discussions in the future. Now, if you are already a member of our free knowledge sharing forum, you will have access to this recording directly. But if not, there's a link below here where you can go and request membership in this free forum and have access not only to just this video, but also the discussion that happens all the time in our community. So I hope you will consider joining. Let me know what's on your mind, thoughts, questions, comments. You're always welcome to reach out. I look forward to seeing you in future sessions. Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining again. We do have some very interesting topics to talk about, but I think some of us are short on time. So what I would like to do is, we do have quite a few people today. So, if you guys don't mind using the chat box just to, do a quick intro. Some of us already know each other, but many of us, we don't. Part of the reason we do this is also to bring the group together and get to know each other, network, and things like that. So in the interest of time, I will skip my one-on-one intro that I usually do, which is always very helpful. But if you guys could use the chat box and drop a quick note, your name, hello everyone, where you are joining from, and then we'll get going. So first off, I think there's a lot of interest in learning about the harmonization, the status of harmonization for 14971. I know I talked about it last time, should be in our recording, but he has an update. Niam, if you have received more information that you might want to share with us. So we'll get started with that. And after that, I'll go into my main topic that I had in mind. And, we'll go from there. So Ed, go for it.
Okay. Well, I think we have the same information, probably. So I have been in touch with the head of the SIN committee on it's a joint technical committee number 3, if I remember right. It's a SIN and SINLEC committee because this is a joint standard by IEC and ISO. So the standard is out for vote, and the vote is nearly closed. I don't know if you have the date in front of you, but
the 26th of October, the date closes. Yeah. So
at the close, what will happen is they'll count up the votes, and if it's approved, then they will release ISO 14971 2016 AMD 11 2021. And that document will be released by SIN and SINLEC and then be available through the European standards providers, like British standards. Estonian standards, I understand, is the cheapest way to go. And a number of other standards providers. I'm sure Dan is in there, and the French standards provider, and so on. So that document will come out, and we're going to talk, I think, just a moment about the structure, but basically there's a ZA and ZB annex. ZA is for MDR, and ZB is for IBDR.
Table ZA1 on another screen here at the moment, and so it's kind of like what Ed had explained at the last Q&A session. So like there's a tabular kind of correspondence between the general safety and performance requirements of the regulation and the standard. But it's to be honest, it's I'll just maybe just give a flavor of what it is. So like say the general safety and performance requirements, it might say number 3, item C, then it will refer to clauses or subclauses of this EN version. And then it will include a statement like it's either covered, full stop, or it's including statements like covered in respect of the process requirements, device-specific execution of the process is not covered. So there's quite a lot of those statements, to be honest, where it says covered in respect of the process requirements, but device-specific execution of the process is not covered. So I could be wrong here, but I think in those cases, you probably need to dive a little bit deeper on it, correct?
What does that mean, Ed? Could you explain?
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Well, what that says is you've got to provide objective evidence that you did what the standard required and that your procedures comply with the, you indicate compliance with the standard. Well, how do you do that? So the notified body auditors are going to come in and they're going to say, well, you claim compliance with the standard, but show me in your procedures how you did that. And then for this particular device, show me the objective evidence that showed that you complied with your procedures, which comply with the standard.
Okay.
So, and it's kind of
so they would want to see product specific risk files and evidence. Yes. But that's that's expected.
That's normal.
That's normal. Okay, so I feel a little bit better now.
Yeah, that's okay. And there's other statements later on where it says like covered in respect to the process requirements, device specific and usability specific execution of the process is not covered. So at its point, they're going to look for your compliance to usability requirements, in your usability files and things like that. Do you know what I mean? But I suppose what's interesting is, number one, the big win here is that there's no content deviations, correct? So let's give them a round of applause for that one, really and truly. So I think we can nearly interpret it that, the regulation, the standard meets the requirements of the regulation, and you're going to be looking for device-specific evidence in your management file and your usability to back that up.
One question I do want to ask, which has been asked of me recently, and I was not too sure. What is the view from a EU-MDR point of view and ISO 14971 point of view about benefit risk for individual residual risk as well as overall residual risk? Can we talk about that?
Yes, we can.
Please.
The MDR requires individual benefit risk. The standard allows it, but doesn't require it. And the requirement is for all risks in the MDR. The requirement in the standard was for unacceptable individual risk.
Yes.
So the statement is, I guess, best exemplified by this. The standard sets a basic set of requirements for the risk management process. The regulators can ask more. And in that case, if you're going to sell in that market, you've got to add to what's in the standard. Okay, so if you're selling everywhere but Europe, all you have to do is any individual risks that are unacceptable. But if you decide to sell in Europe, then you're going to have benefit risk for all.
So do you see then in the ZA and ZB this description that it's not meeting?
No.
So that's gonna create a lot of confusion, right? How would manufacturers know that this is what is required by EU-MDR? And let's say they don't sell in Europe today and they adopt a policy of only what is in ISO 14971, but then they decide to sell in EU-MDR. Now, are they going to go back and remediate the risk files?
Well, I will say it this way. The word risk appears over 200 times in the MDR and the IMDR.
Yeah.
I forget, benefit risk ratio is like 27 times or something like that.
Yeah.
You have somebody in your company needs to be familiar with the MDR and the requirements of the MDR or IVDR as appropriate. And you have to look and see what you have to do. For instance, it talks about benefit risk ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is that? It's not explained anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to come up with that. And some people are interpreting that as being a numerical interpretation of benefit to risk. So you have to come up with two numbers. You can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It ain't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The best example of benefit to risk is there's 5 FDA guidance documents that talk about benefit risk. And those give you examples, and they're all text-based. They're all descriptions because there's so many elements of benefit to risk, including the patient's interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's going to be something that is.
So my question then, Ed, is that this kind of awareness and understanding should also be promoted among the notified body auditors.
It will be.
I can see that there'll be huge variation in the way they treat the way standard is written versus the way the requirements are written. And if it's not clear, like corresponding in the tables in the ZB annexes, I particularly think about the benefit risk for individual risks versus overall risk. I think that could be a pretty, but I will pause here, guys. I know there are a lot of people on the calls, and I want everybody to get a chance to ask questions, share comments, their thoughts. What are you guys thinking? And I know this is a little bit off topic, but this is important. And we'll get to our main topic too. So please go ahead.
Just one further thing that I would add. What I would recommend to people to do, I would assume that everyone has a quality plan for 14971 2019 compliance. And if you don't, I would strongly recommend that you do put one in place, because notified bodies are most certainly looking for that. I would recommend that obviously when the harmonized version is covered, that would be included in the scope obviously of the quality plan, and that there would be a section that would talk, where you would do a review, kind of a gap analysis of your general safety and requirement and the new EU-MDR requirements against how you're planning to claim compliance to the EN harmonized version, and outline where you see the gaps are and what you're planning to do. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I think there are, even we had a Q&A session a couple of months ago about, disclosure of residual risks. We know the standard requires significant residual risks, whereas EU-MDR requires all residual risks. So there's, wording kind of ambiguity there as well, which I think needs to be resolved. And I think it needs to be documented as part of the QMS.
Very good point. Anybody else? I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, thoughts. Go ahead, please. If
you want to know how to do that, you can look at Annex G, Gulf, of 24971, because they talk about components and devices designed without using ISO 14971, and they talk about developing a plan to update your risk management file. So that's a roadmap that you can use. It's short. It's only half a page. A description that gives you an idea of what needs to be in that plan. And that's a super recommendation. It also applies, and I'm going to go a little bit astray, Naveen, but that's okay.
Go ahead.
ISO 13485 2016 Amendment 11 2021 was released on September 9th. it will be the harmonized version of 13485. So you need to have a plan for how you're going to move from your 1345 based quality system to the new harmonized version. And the problem with harmonization is that it's been indicated they're only going to publish the harmonization list twice a year. And so that probably kind of come towards the end of the year, and we'll get that. But you need to have a plan for updating 1345 and 14971 and any other standards that pop out in this next harmonization list, as well as those 5 that showed up in June.
Mm-hmm.
So
a lot of activity.
Yeah.
A lot of activity. Yeah. All right, guys. Anybody else has thoughts, questions, comments about 14971 harmonization? What's coming? I know this is going to be pretty important for a lot of us.
Let me take one more thing I just thought of, Naveen.
Okay.
The BSI version of 13485 harmonized, Amendment 11, supposedly contains some information on meeting the requirements of the UK if you sell in there.
Got it.
So that may be something to look at as well.
Okay, so again, you guys can think about questions, comments. We can return to those. I want to move on to our main topic today. And the reason I picked this as a focus topic because we talked about this in our last Q&A, and I feel like this is an emerging area, not immediately sort of happening right now, but emerging. And the reason I say that is it's looking ahead. And if you are aware of how things are moving, you can plan and respond appropriately. So I will share my screen with everybody. See if you guys can see my screen first of all. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
So I want to talk about understanding and how to use, why to use these standardized terms. It is happening right now. FDA, MDR, and IMDRF. So there's a lot of harmonization that has already happened, already going on. And there is a consensus emerging overall. So before I go there, I want to remind everybody that our free knowledge sharing forum is now on the new Achieve website. Sorry for the confusion, but I'm separating the consulting side of my website from the learning and community side. Learning and community will be all on Achieve. And that way there'll be less confusion and we can all participate and engage without any concerns about any conflict of interest. So it is free and it's a new platform, very interesting, very easy. Many people have joined. I invite you to join and share your thoughts and continue our discussion on the knowledge sharing forum. So, okay. So why use these standard terms? This comes from the IMDRF guidance that was finalized in 2020. The reference is at the bottom. Look at the language they're using. Accuracy of capturing and reporting adverse events. Standardization helps. Reducing ambiguity. More effective evaluation of adverse events. Effective for what? That's the question I ask. Does it mean our current evaluation is not effective? And who is evaluating? Regulators are evaluating and manufacturers are also evaluating, right? So the question of what do we mean by effective? What are we expecting it to deliver and what it is not doing today? That will happen by standardization. Is keep that question at the back of your mind. Most importantly to me, and I'm very happy to see this, signal detection. And I always tell people, trending is not signal detection. Trending is sometimes always too late. Signal happens before there's a trend. But we will do trend analysis through advanced querying. That's also a keyword. Consistency in reporting across different jurisdictions. You may not need to use different terms. Increase accuracy and reliability of information shared between regulatory authorities. Now that part caught my eye because in Europe, where you have many different jurisdictions within Europe and many different countries, they want to share the same information about adverse events. So everybody will be informed. There will be less confusion. That's a vision, right? This is a guidance. That's a vision. So against the backdrop of this, I definitely sense, and I would love to hear your thoughts, guys. So please speak up anytime, by the way. I believe that the regulatory oversight even in the US, is moving from passive to active, slowly right now. But give it a few more years, with the age of data and information and advanced analytics, I expect fully that they will have a lot more capability. So this, you guys heard about NEST, National Evaluation System for Health Technologies? Are you guys familiar with that? Yes, no, maybe? Maybe,
Yeah.
No.
no? Okay, so I will start from, NEST is actually sort of a totally, it's not related to FDA. It's a totally independent voluntary organization. On their webpage, they say, in 2015, it was conceived with the idea of bringing together different data partners, people who own healthcare data. Keyword is data. So we want to get access to common data floating across the ecosystem and be able to analyze that. FDA has now become a part of it by giving them a grant through MDIC in 2016. So it's a third-party MDIC, which is public-private partnership. And the goal is leveraging real-world data and real-world evidence to manage medical device safety and effectiveness throughout the product life cycle. Okay, so their vision is transforming the way medical device technologies are tested, approved, and monitored. Okay, so use of these 3 bullet points are coming from a video I watched from a representative from the FDA on NEST page. Use of real world evidence in pre-market activities. What does that mean? Meaning when we go pre-market for approval or clearance, we should be aware of what the background rates are compared to the device that we are proposing, because benefits risk will be judged, evaluated in the context of this background rate. Okay, that's my interpretation. Update medical device reporting requirements. So standardization will play a role here. Use of real world data for post-market surveillance. Post-market surveillance from a regulatory perspective. What would they want to do? Like the thing that I think about is, now last one, their activity is UDI adoption and application. They're starting to talk about it. Very difficult subject and still probably years away before it's implemented. But when it's implemented and you link UDI to medical health records and information, guess what happens? You have very clear line of visibility and line of sight to device specific adverse events. That forms the background rate. So, and on this graphic, you guys can see payers, regulators, clinician groups, industry, research and health systems, patient groups. Now, they're bringing together a lot of people, already been going on for 5 years. And many in the industry, many big names, if you go to their website, you'll find who they are actually beginning to get involved because they feel like they can use this platform to improve the maybe efficiency or the speed to market, improve the post-market surveillance. They're becoming a part of it. So I think the momentum is happening now already. I'll pause here because I know this is a very new topic and some of you may be familiar, some of you may not be familiar. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel about this? Please share your thoughts.
Well, Naveen, I can say that when we developed Clause 10 of 14971, we had this in mind, that it would be active, that you could not wait for complaints to come in, but you had to go out and seek information on your device. And it could vary from a brand new device where you just released it, you want to be very active and go out there frequently and seek information about how that device is performing, where if you have had something on the market for 5 years or more, you may have a good, stable set of information. And what you want to do is just watch for those indicators that something has changed. So it's not as intense as with a brand new device. So that was in the Clause 10 of 14971. It's also Clause 8 of 13485, because we based both of those on the CAPA guidance document from GHTF. And CAPA guidance talked about all of that kind of thing. Gosh, I think that was a 2010 document maybe. So this has been going on a while. and the move from passive to active, the seeking more data. The CAPA guidance has some great examples of data sources and data elements within those sources that you should be monitoring. So
I look at it this way. You know, Ed, I think this vision has been established and activities are going. I'm always asked by people when I present this, how many years do you think it'll take for it to actually happen and become a requirement?
It's already been 10 years.
So the thing is, yes, I'm tempted to say, this is how I think. I'm tempted to say, who cares? It is coming. It is going to happen. The world can change in a year. Are you going to wait 10 years, 15 years before a requirement is written? Or are we going to do something about it? But so with you guys, I'm really very, very open and direct. Okay, that's my outlook. And that's what I like to share with you. And of course, we have to be pragmatic. We have to see how we want to implement, but I want us to be aware that it's going to happen. Okay, so moving on.
I have actually something to add here.
Yes,
this is Aaron. You know, I think it's great if there's this new organization that's been, you know, given a grant to try to, it sounds like, try to help with the accumulation and accessibility of this data, because you know, we do try to use real world data at many different points in our either product development or risk management process, but it's not easy. You know, I mean, you can do a literature search and try to find data that way, but when trying to access other manufacturers' data, of course, there's the MOD database and probably databases on other from other countries. But just even speaking about MOD, I mean, the task of trying to cull through that data, it's really not very user friendly.
No.
It's not very easy to sort, to really find what you need. It's so daunting that it almost becomes prohibitive. So I guess if, you know, we do it, but if there was a way to make it easier so that people really could use this data on other devices, that would be ideal.
I'm sure they'll make it. I'm sure since it's a public organization, I mean, Nest is not like indebted or connected with anything. There will be availability. And I'm just going to drop this to you guys that in one of these sessions, I'm going to actually give you a walkthrough of how you can analyze raw MOD data.
Has anybody used the TPLC database? The FDA's TPLC? Because it does that.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to go one step beyond, Ed and team. I'm going to show you the raw data files that FDA has already made available to people. And Aaron, you are right. It is very difficult. Very cumbersome. It has already taken me some time to dig through it, but I will give you guys a presentation.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go through the quantities, you know, if there's in some of these devices, there's large quantities of data, and it's just
and you will see a lot of signals. So anyway, good point, Aaron. Thank you for sharing. And I think it'll make all of us in the industry better if we are prepared. That's my
absolutely
idea.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that standard codes are required for adverse events reporting today by FDA. Right? You have a section which talks about the health effect, medical device problem code, health effect impact code, and component code. You have sections there. Same thing in the MIR form in European Commission. I'm sure your complaints group and other groups are already practicing this to a certain extent because it is expected as part of reporting. The topic I want to talk about today is, are we integrating that within our risk management process? Because we need to link PMS, post-market surveillance, with our risk files. Do we have that link? And that's what I want to talk about. So I hope everyone is doing this, right? I'm thinking because this is required. These forms are required to be filled and they are fields. Okay, so here's the slide that I want to talk about. Remember, risk management spans across the total product life cycle, right? So what's the purpose? PMS data review has to be continuous, right? Continuous. That's what is expected. But what's the end goal? The end goal is benefit risk. That's the overarching goal of our process because we need to continually establish or make sure our benefit risk is favorable throughout its product life cycle. That's a full story. So what are we supposed to do? New failures, new failure modes, new causes, changes in occurrence rates. We need to be able to have a good sense of that using our PMS data. And that should lead to updating our engineering analysis, identifying and implementing new risk control measures, correct? Makes sense. This is what the standard expects us to do, right? But if we don't have the way of mining the post-market data and have some sort of a baseline background information against which to compare this appropriately, we are not going to be able to make good decisions. On the other hand, on the hazard side, we have to find new hazards, hazardous situations, new harms, and change in occurrence rates again. And that should lead to updating your hazard analysis and updating the risk acceptability. And there is a connection. There's a connection between the two, right? These two analyses have to work sort of in synergy with each other. So this is the context in which the standardization effort becomes relevant, in my opinion, for our risk management process. Does this make sense, guys?
Yeah, there's an ISO TIR that talks about this, which is 20416, I think, which talks about connecting the data from 1345 and 14971 for post-market surveillance. And it's a good guidance document. First revision, so it'll take a couple cycles for it to really be valuable, but it has some good information in it now.
Yes.
Ed, can you say that document one more time?
Yeah, it's 20416. It's a TIR. I'm looking for my copy here so I make sure.
Yes, ISO TR 20416, Ed. Medical device post-market surveillance for manufacturers. We can post that in the chat also, if Ed, if you don't mind doing that.
I will do that. It's a 2020 document, so it is fairly new.
Okay, so terms and codes are now harmonized to a large extent, right? FDA, IMDRF, actually pretty much one-to-one relationship is what I found. I'll give you some examples. NCIT Thesaurus, National Cancer Institute. Now, are you guys familiar with that? It took me a while to look this up. Anybody knows about NCIT?
Yes, yes.
You want to share your understanding or experience with that?
So I guess I'm trying to think of the, so is the NCI thesaurus, is that based on the common toxicity criteria for adverse events?
Well, so Erin, I'm specifically talking about the codes, because those codes I learned are used in software applications used for medical purposes across the board.
I guess I will say in many different experiences I've had, when we're talking about patient problem codes, and maybe I don't know why, but I've always seen the FDA code and a corresponding NCI code. So yes. Maybe I should say I don't know why, but I always see them there together. So maybe that's what you're going to share.
Well, so yeah, so I'll give you examples, but think about it in the context of what we have already talked about. If the overall goal is to mine this massive amount of data being generated in many parts of our healthcare ecosystem, we need some standardization. NCIT terms are used very broadly for research purposes. I'm expecting for reporting purposes, maybe for claims, maybe for electronic health records. I will look into that more and learn more. But if we are going to mine that information, we need some mapping between how FDA is coding adverse events or has been coding adverse events, how IMDRF is going to recommend those codes. We need some kind of a mapping so that we can analyze this massive amount of data from different sources. So they are mapped to NCIT, IMDRF, European Commission direct connection, and direct link to MEDRA. So everything is kind of coming together. And all these databases, in fact, they're also going to align on the frequency of updates. When new terms are suggested or recommended, what should be the process by which these databases should be updated? So that kind of standardization is going to happen more and more. So here is a basically layout of FDA codes and IMDRF codes in the guidance. There are 7 annexes. A is medical device problem. B is type of investigation, C is findings, and D is conclusion. So that's cause investigation. Those codes are supposed to be used as part of reporting your investigation of adverse events. I don't know how many companies are doing that. So that was one question I had for the group, if anybody wants to share their experience of using these codes. E and F are clinical signs, symptoms, and conditions and health impact. G are medical device components. So these codes are organized in these 7 annexes and terms and codes. So I'll pause here. Are you guys using some of these type of investigation findings, conclusions when you report your adverse events or do your investigations at least? No? Yes? Maybe?
Yes.
Yes. Great. I would love to hear more about it. If you are willing to share how you use them, if you want to share that in a future session or here, that will be fine. But
Sure.
I will be very interested.
Okay. We just basically use it when we get complaints in. We are required to use these codes I don't know if you're familiar with the TrackWise database.
Yeah.
So in the QCM TrackWise database for complaint handling, they have all of these codes listed in drop downs, and we're required to map complaints to these codes.
Got it. So that'll be, I think I'm pretty sure we are using A, E, and potentially F. I'm not sure if we are using B, C, and D, because that is a follow-up to the investigation.
Yes, I don't believe we are using those either.
Yes, that was because the reason I asked that question is that should inform your understanding of new failure modes, new causes, right? If we are doing that. Otherwise, it'll be hard because A by itself, medical device problem codes in A by itself, actually it says very clearly, there is no causative relationship implied. It's just a symptom that is being reported to you by in a complaint. You have to do the investigation to confirm it. So B, C, D, unless those codes are coded in the complaints system as a follow-up to investigation, I don't know how we will be able to find new failure modes and causes. That was what I was going for. And E and F, of course, we know that we have to report, and we will know what kind of clinical signs, symptoms, and conditions are reported. So it'll be interesting to see the practice in the industry if it evolves to start using B, C, and D. Now, in one of our last Q&As, a question was asked about, or discussion was about clinical literature. Many terms are used and they are not standardized. I think it might be worthwhile for us to look at that and see how they might map to terms in E and F, Annexes E and F, to be able to standardize those. Okay, so here's an example. Here's the structure of, they have level 1, level 2, level 3, and I'll give you an example. So at the high level, there are 24 categories of level 1 terms in Annex E, and they all relate to a very high level 1. So for example, infections, very broad term. The recommendation is to use the lowest level term possible specific to your application and the availability of data. So if you just code against infections, it doesn't tell us much. Now, I have done some work in the ophthalmology area. To me, the level 2 eye infections becomes a little bit more relevant for those complaints. And out of eye infections, level 3, intraocular is a specific type of infection. If we have information, we'll be coding against level 3. So here are the codes. So it goes in specificity, FDA code, NCIT code, and IMDRF code. And I give you this example. I'll send you a link where you can download these annexes from FDA and also the IMDRF guidance. So E19, 19 is just category 19 in IMDRF reflects infections. And I remember I'm telling you 24. So it's 19 out of 24. And these are the codes. And they may not mean much at this point of time, but know that there is a FDA code, there's an NCIT code, and IMDRF code mapped to the same term. So when this code is coded in the database or used in the database, you can compile all the data. For example, if you want to know the baseline rate of intraocular infection, you will look up either 1933 or E081801 or C50617. Look at what is being reported as an aggregate. So now this kind of a coding and mapping becomes important. Make sense so far? Right? Same thing applies to Annex A, which is device problem code. So I just picked up patient device interaction problem. We find that sometimes there are codes. Now, this is high level. We don't know specifically what happened. Now, there could be incompatibility. And part of the incompatibility could be biocompatibility problem. So you can dig deeper, and the deeper you go, the more useful this data would be for you. And that's the whole purpose. Annex C now is your term code structure for Annex C in terms of your cause. Biological problem identified, biological contamination, and microbial contamination. So you can see how the level of specificity increases in these terms. And then finally, if you are able to trace the root cause or one of the root causes, you have codes for that. Cause traced to device design, that's a high level, or design inadequate for purpose. That's a lower level. There's no level 3 term in this cause investigation, Annex D, as far as I could tell. So what it's, I think, giving regulators is a playbook, is to basically see the link between what is being reported in a complaint, device problem, and clinical signs and symptoms and medical effect, and what the investigation is finding. That's what, in my opinion, will happen in future, where you will be able to go straight to understanding of your root cause and figure out exactly where they might be happening. So the question to the group would be, or thing to consider would be, should we align these codes and terms exactly the way our complaint system is already working that way? I heard from one of you that you are reporting based on these codes. Same codes and terms be reflected in our risk management files so that the probability of harm that we calculate, the probability of failure mode that we calculate for failure modes are all aligned with what we are learning from the field. If we are using different terminologies, most likely we are not looking at the complete data. That's the point I want to communicate. Make sense so far, guys? Any questions, comments, thoughts on this?
I don't know how up to date I am, Naveen, but back in the day, 20 years ago, when I was responsible for complaint system and everything, we had to really pull teeth to get anything that was useful out of the complainer, I will call it, the facility that was reporting the problem. Most of their reports were not useful at all. They did not have enough information. And as hard as we would try, they would not give us more. In some cases, they said their risk manager told them not to report anything. So I don't know if that's changed or not.
So let me ask the group. I think that problem still persists. We have incomplete information from the complaints intake process, but we do have information. So I want to open this up to the group as well. What do you guys think? How easy or how difficult it is for you guys to go all the way down to your investigations, or even enough information to do a proper investigation? What is your experience? Anybody, please? Let's. Okay, no worries. But I think my experience is similar, although I have seen a lot of data still available that could be analyzed. Okay, so it's not a perfect story, Ed, to your point, but I expect more and more information to become available in future. And when you have large data sets available for public in an easy format, you might be able to use other sources of information as well, not just your complaints, to figure out what you should be doing in your risk management process.
Yeah, when we were using the MOD database back, I was on an FDA committee that developed a guidance document, well, the hospital bed guidance. We looked at all of the MDR reports on hospital events, and we came to the conclusion that we didn't know what happened because the reports were inaccurate, incomplete, and just were not helpful at all. So,
yeah, and I think that challenge still persists, Ed, like I was saying. It still persists, but what I will say to that is it's up to us to figure out how to continue to improve our understanding. what's
But
happening with our devices in the field.
I think FDA is pushing in that direction
Yep.
with a lot of their initiatives that are going on. They're
Mhm.
trying to improve things,
Mhm.
but
Oh,
it's on the part of the manufacturer to help them, because that's the source. Well, the customer is the source of the information, but the manufacturer is the FDA's source of information.
Yep. So guys, the last slide I will show with you is just a kind of perspective slide. And I'm a runner, so I'll give you a running analogy, right? Boston Marathon just happened. Again, great race. So if you look at the qualifying times for Boston Marathon over the last, let's say 30, 40, 50 years, they have improved, right? You could get into Boston even if you ran like a 4-hour marathon. You couldn't do that today because the qualifying times are around 3 hours. This is how I look at evolving regulatory environment. It is much more difficult today, right, than it was before. But guess what the winning times are? Around 2 hours, consistently. So the point that I try to make here is to be able to comply with these evolving requirements is what we must do to get in. But to win, we have to do more than that. We have to do more than that. And look at Boston. The ambition is, can we break the 2-hour barrier? It'll be interesting to see what happens. So this is just like a philosophical thought, and that's why I chose this topic today to share with you. There is no requirement today for you to use standard terms in your risk management file. But if you did that, you will create a platform for you to use data better as it becomes available to you and be able to respond earlier. So I'm gonna actually now stop sharing this and bring everybody back in the room. I know some people had to go, and that's fine. This recording will be available, but I want to open up in the remaining 5-10 minutes we have. Thoughts, questions, anything on your mind you want to share? Did we cover a topic that was of use to you? Did you find this useful information? What is your view on this? Because we did this differently in this Q&A this time.
I think my view is I think it's great. I think it would certainly facilitate the process of working your post-market surveillance data directly back into the risk management file. And I think various places where I've had experience in this are at varying levels of readiness for that. It's just such a huge effort to perhaps change, if you're going to change the way you code things. What does that mean for all of the complaints and data that you already have, right? Mm-hmm. How do you transition from the old to the new and something like this? And it seems like a big effort.
Good point. I agree with Aaron. This is Leanne. We work together, Aaron and Cameron and I.
Hi,
and this is very, very relevant to what we're working with today. And like Aaron said, it's we seem to be constantly remediating and going back and recoding complaints, and especially with our trending data, it's like you can't get a decent trend unless you have X amount of data, and so we have to go back and remediate, and it's a costly and very time-consuming effort. But it would be so great to finally get to one standardized way of doing all of this, so we don't have to constantly remediate.
Yeah, good point. Yes, thank you for sharing that. It's a challenge. Anybody else would like to share their thoughts, comments, questions on this topic? No? So what I will say to those comments, Aaron and Leanne, is you have your complaints intake process that has evolved over time, right? In the beginning, people were reporting in a certain way. We were coding them in a certain way. Many times people have been using the category other to capture things that were not on the list or in a drop-down menu. A lot of things were part and other, and it becomes very difficult over time, right? So there should be some improvement effort in that area, but that's actually a very difficult area to make changes because you have a lot of information already present there, right? And on this side, risk management files, you want to do accurate data analysis and trending and signal detection and statistics and whatever. How do you find a bridging mechanism? That's the key challenge. So one of the thoughts I want to leave you guys with to think about is just the way, look, FDA did not change their codes. Remember, their codes are still different from NCIT codes and IMDRF codes. They didn't change their codes because they have been using it for many, many years. But what they did was that they created a map, right? They created a map. So if someone says this object is yellow, but I come from a language where yellow is not a word. I don't know what yellow is unless I see it. I call yellow something different. I just need to be able to create a map where yellow means X, Y, Z in different languages, but it's the same thing without changing that thing. So keep that in mind. It is not an easy activity, but if you figure out how to create a dictionary for yourself in your organization without touching your intake process too much, you may be able to utilize the information that's coming in for your, and I say this because I have actually done that in some of my work. It is possible, but it takes a little bit of effort, and you have to maintain it over time. So not an easy task, but maybe you can find some automation. Maybe you can do some new techniques. It may be possible to create a dictionary for you. So I don't want us to, I know it can be overwhelming and difficult, but if we take a step back and say, what's the best way to execute without disrupting too much of what we are doing today, and make a small step forward, because then you can continue to improve in that area. So I know we are coming right again to the end of our hour. How are you guys feeling overall? I know we didn't get a chance to talk too much today, but let me know either now or through your comments or any follow-ups. What's on your mind? What would you like to learn more about? The knowledge forum is there for you. If you join it, you can post comments and questions and share information there as well. Any last thoughts, comments from anybody?
I think it was a good session today, Naveen. I've really enjoyed your presentation and the little bit of discussion that we had, because this is a very important topic, and the time it's going to take to move is going to be long. I go back and relate to the risk management standard again to beat a dead horse. We first put the process out there in 2000, and yet today there's still people that struggle with, okay, what's this process about, and so on. So it takes time and effort and resources, and that's something that we're going to have to fight for in our organization, because there's so many competing resources that we're going to have to understand, and the FDA's quality initiative, I think, is headed in that direction, trying to improve the quality of our products in the field for our patients. And like I say in my risk management classes, do risk management as if you were the first patient to use the device. And I think we have to take that viewpoint, that it's personal and it affects us directly when we move forward.
Yeah, and I think, Ed, a lot of us in the industry have that passion already, and I can see that in the people I come across, people who attend our discussions and forums. I think we are all struggling with just the rate at which change is happening, the rate at which things are coming at us, and we are kind of just trying to keep up, not sync. Too many requirements, too much changes to do. So I do feel like we have that passion and commitment, but we are sort of overwhelmed. And to that, I would say, guys, hang in there. We are all doing important work, especially you in the industry. Now you are the ones bringing products to market. So keep it up, and we will all get through this, I think, over time, and things will improve, and our products will continue to be successful in the market. So I'm actually I have that optimistic view, because if I look at, again, going back to my Boston Marathon analogy, I will not even try, but many people still try, right? They try. All right, guys, I know we are at 11 o'clock. We are fully done. So I really appreciate once again all of you joining our session. The recording will be available. Please, please, please continue to engage. Let me know what is on your mind, and use the forum. Thank you, everyone, and have a very good weekend.
Thanks, Naveen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.